Alright, so as I said I would do, I'm going to explain some extraterrestrial, alien, and paranormal phenomenon I've experienced in my life. Now, I haven't experienced for a long time now anything, but especially in my teenage years and childhood, a lot happened. So I've written a list here of some things I wanted to mention. Now, there's one specific scenario, probably one of the most important, if not the most important scenario I don't want to mention yet. It's a very long story too, but I've written a list here of things that I want to explain. So the first item on the menu is the golden orb with a horn. One time as a child, I went to sleep at night like usual, and I woke up in the middle of the night, in the middle of my bedroom, far from my bed, in the middle of the bedroom, flat on my back, as though I'd fallen from about 10 feet high. I was injured, I was really hurt, and none of it made any sense. What the hell is going on? Why am I here in the middle of the bedroom? Why am I so hurt? And I was extremely puzzled and sore, and it came to my attention that something was there. I felt like something else was there, and I turned around and looked under the bed, and there was this golden orb. It was really bright, and it had on the upper right hand side, it had a triangular horn sticking out of it. I just sat there under the bed, and it was really bright and gold, and you would expect from something that bright that there would be light glowing, emitting off it and reflecting on the surface of the bed and the wall, but there was nothing. It was bright, but there was no reflection of light. I didn't know what to think, and I just laid there staring at it for a while, and eventually I received a strong, we will call telepathic message in my head, in a robotic voice, really loud, explaining to me that it wasn't a threat to me, that it was protecting me from an intruder. It explained to me that I wasn't meant to be aware of its presence. It explained to me that I need to go back to bed and go back to sleep. I just laid there staring at it for a while still, not sure what to make of it. I was obviously very concerned, and eventually I got up, I went out of the room not knowing what to think. I came back in the room, looked under the bed again, and it's still there. It didn't say anything else. It was just sitting there under the bed. And for some strange reason, I decided to do what it said, and I went back to bed. And nothing happened after that. Really strange thing. It happened when I was a child. So next item on the menu, 1990s UFO wave incident. Okay, in the 1996 to 1998, in Gosford and Wyong Shires, as I've mentioned, you can look up Gosford Files on YouTube for one particular event out of many that happened during the late 1990s in Gosford and Wyong Shires of New South Wales, Australia, where I lived in Batter Bay. At the start of this UFO wave, which is one of the greatest UFO waves ever, which particular event was I going to mention? Okay, I know which one I was going to mention. A lot happened in that time, but there's one particular event that I wanted to mention. Okay, I was in my bedroom as a teenager. Should have been a teenager, I think. It was 1996, I think it was. So I think I might have been in my late teens then, as an estimate. I was born in 1977, so this was 1996. Yeah, I would have been in my late teens, I think. So I could I was in my bedroom, and it was early nighttime, and I could hear this strange sound, and I've got a copy of it somewhere. I built this into a flash file. Here we go. I've got a copy here. So this is the sound it made. It's almost identical to this sound if you can hear it on this phone. Okay, it was similar to that, and the same strange pulsing sound, and let's see if you could hear it. I hope you could hear it. The strange pulsing sound, and the pitch didn't change, but the speed of the pulse changed as though it was changing gears, and it was getting louder and fainter, as though something was traveling. I didn't know where it was coming from at first. I thought must have been some strange echo of a motorbike sound or something at first. But obviously quickly I realised it wasn't, and it seemed to be coming from the sky, and it was moving around fast, like something was rampantly, frantically searching for something from the sky. It was just moving around erratically, and it was doing this for quite a while, a long time, and didn't know what to make of it. I didn't go outside to look at it because I was a bit concerned about what it could be. And suddenly, out of nowhere, I was blind. Completely blind. I just see black. And then I could see an alien head with its forehead up against mine. It wasn't human. It was it was a little bit like a human. It had a nose, big eyes, and a similar facial shape than a human, but its jaw was a lot smaller, and the rest of its head was bigger in comparison. It wasn't a grey alien, but it was a cross between a human and a grey alien in some ways. And it was emaciated. It was really so skinny, but it didn't look unhealthy. It just looked like that was the way it was, and it had a lot of definition. You could see the bones in its head. Its skin was extremely thin, and you could see the bones in its head. There was no fat in it whatsoever. I wish I could. I've never seen a picture of an alien anything like this. But anyway, it had its head against mine, and I could hear its thoughts in my head. And it was a he. It wasn't an it or a she. It was definitely a he. I could experience his thoughts. His own mind wasn't exactly separate to my mind, as though we overlapped some of our minds overlapped in some way. So I could hear more than what he was saying, but I could hear a clear message from him. He explained to me that they weren't looking for me, they weren't aware of me yet. He explained to me that I needed to urgently hide, not let them discover me, that they were looking for someone else, not me, and they weren't aware of me yet. I was going to try and acknowledge what he said, but then I decided I'd probe him back. I'd mentally probe him back. I wanted to know more about him. And so I tried to pierce his mind with my mind to see more, and he was surprised at first and unprepared for me doing that, and he began to resist me, and then I overpowered him, and I was able to see through his eyes and his surroundings, and he was in he was in a spaceship high in the atmosphere, and he was communicating with me through he was sitting on a panel, and he was communicating to me through a device. So this wasn't some kind of magical mind telepathy or anything. There was technology involved here. He was doing this through technology, and there were at least 2 others like him on the other side of a big open area. And they weren't paying attention. They weren't aware of anything that was going on. They were just doing their own thing. And I could see through his eyes. And shortly after that, he managed to just knock me back to where I was. And he regained his composure, and just repeated what he had just told me, that I need to hide and not be discovered. He repeated that, and I acknowledged him, and then it disappeared, and then I could see again. For at least a few seconds I was like in shock, like what the hell just happened, and then I decided to hide, and I hid under my blanket. I didn't know where else to hide. I tried to hide under my blanket, and the strange sound in the sky kept coming and going, and then it wasn't that long after that it changed. Instead of coming and going, it was staying still, and it was nearby, and it was staying still, and it slowly got louder and louder and louder, and it just kept getting louder. So loud that it felt like it was inside the room. It was like there was a bass sound, a bass to the pulse. It was so close that it was like having my head right up to a loud subwoofer. And as it got really close, the whole environment seemed to change. Everything seemed to distort. As though time was slowing down. My mind wasn't slowing down, but time was slowing down, and I couldn't move at a normal speed. Everything was getting distorted and slowing down. The sound itself seemed to change in, for lack of a better word, frequency. Everything slowed down, and suddenly out of nowhere I got this piercing headache. And then it stopped. And it came on again. And it stopped. And it happened a few times. As though I was being scanned by something. And then after that, it just kept going slower and slower and slower until everything just eventually seemed to stop. Right after stopping, suddenly the sound, everything got undistorted, and as the sound went back up to normal speed, and then it just went away, casually went away. And I didn't hear from it again for, I think it was something like it was at least half an hour. But anyway, I ended up going upstairs, and I discovered I was missing time. I think it was somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour and a half of time had just gone out of nowhere. And after some time went by, the sound came back again, but it was different. Instead of doing this, changing the pulse remained the same, and the pitch, the note, it was going like on woo 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 woo, like that. The pulse, the pitch was changing without a pulse, and the pulse was changing as well. But it was mostly the pitch that was changing in the same pulse, as I was changing gears in another strange way. I don't know what was going on, but it's really strange. So I was doing this, and it was moving around still in the sky, and I decided I'm going to go and have a look at this thing, see it with my own eyes, see what the hell just did this to me, what the hell it was. I went outside on the balcony, and I could see for about 10 seconds this object gliding across the sky. And at the time it was just going as a simple woo, 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 like that. And for about 10 seconds I saw it glide across the sky, and it wasn't far away and it wasn't too close. It was a distance that I could see it very clearly, the whole shape of it and everything. And it was like a classic 1970s type UFO. It was like a disc shape, a fat disc shape body and it was glowing orange, and it had a very defined line. It wasn't like glowing as though there was it didn't have a aura to it. It was just a clear defined line of glowing orange, and there was a red dome on top, and something seemed to be moving in the dome. I couldn't make it out, and it just glided across the sky for about 10 seconds, and that was it. But that was the first experience I had at the start of this 1990s UFO wave, for lack of a better word, in the late 1990s in Gosford and Wong Shires of New South Wales, Australia. I was just at the start of it. There were events where thousands of people will witness any particular event, and there's a lot to this. You won't find any of this on the internet, but it was well known at the time. People will remember. The media covered it at first, and then they went completely silent about it and refused to even talk about it. Local newspapers, everything. As far as I remember, it was never covered on the TV, but it was covered in the newspapers at first, and then they just went dead silent, and there was hysteria. Everyone went into hysteria because of what they were seeing. People were too scared to go out at night. There was rampant hysteria among the Central Coast over this. So that's another event. Now, what's the next one? I'll just get the file out. The list. Okay, the shadow figure. Now, I think this happened when I was in my mid-teens, I think it was. This isn't an extraterrestrial experience. This is, for lack of a better word, you could call it supernatural. I woke up one day. I woke up in my bed, and something felt wrong. I felt like there was someone there, and I looked at the end of my bed, and at the end of my bed was this shadowy figure, this tall, stocky shadow figure, and it was distorted, and it was just a black shadow of blackness, a distorted figure, and it was just there at the end of the bed, just staring at me. A few seconds after seeing it, I suddenly blacked out, and I felt like I was being turned inside out. And then I was in a tunnel. I was moving along in this orange kind of tunnel, and eventually I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. All I could do was see in front of me. And I was moving in this tunnel, and I had no control over my movement. I was just moving on this tunnel, and eventually, coming from the distance of the tunnel, came toward me a skeleton sitting on a throne that had red carpeted throne. This dead skeleton sitting on the throne. Now, it looked almost human, but it wasn't human. It was something was wrong with it. It had its arms especially were definitely longer than a human's arms. It was almost human, but it wasn't human. And it came up to me in front of me and stood there. And after looking at it in terror, suddenly it come to life, and with a high-pitched shriek, suddenly I was being drawn into it until I passed out. As I came into it, I passed out. I came to again, and I was inside this skeleton sitting on the throne. I couldn't move. I could only see, and I could look around, but I couldn't move. My head couldn't move anything. But I was inside this skeleton, traveling along this orange tunnel. A loud voice spoke to me. Didn't explain who or what it was. It just explained to me that it would offer me all of this if only I do one thing, one simple thing. Just bow down to it, to this voice. All I need to do is bow down to this voice, and it will give me the throne to the entire world. And it showed me images on the sides of the tunnel. I could see images of the earth, from seeing above cities and above an orbit. Showed me the earth from different perspectives. And he explained to me that it would offer me all of this if I just bow down to it. I didn't answer it at first, and the voice became frustrated with me and demanded that I answer. And I eventually refused to bow down. And I can't remember. I think it got very angry after that and said something, but I can't remember what it was. And then I realized that whatever this voice was, it was trapped in the tunnel with me and couldn't escape. And I was able to hold it there. I realized that I wasn't under its power, it was under my power. So I trapped this voice, whatever it was, in the tunnel. And at the end of the tunnel, a light appeared at the end of the tunnel. And as the light got closer, the voice screamed. And then the light hit, and then suddenly I was back in my body again, but I wasn't lying in my bed. I was sitting up. I was sitting up beside my bed. I don't know how that happened, but I was sitting up beside my bed instead of lying in my bed. And that was the end of it. That happened in my teenage years. So what's the next one? Okay, this happened many years later. This happened several years ago in my old home. I woke up one night in the middle of the night, and I was lying on the opposite side upside down on the opposite side of my bed, the other way around, and I was face down, as though I'd been dumped. I'd been clumsily dumped on my bed, my arms and legs were on a weird angle too. And at first I was like, this isn't right. What the hell how am I like this? And I quickly became aware that there were at least 3 small creatures beside my bed, watching me, just standing there watching me. And I panicked. I didn't know what to do, and I eventually grabbed the end of my bed and held on as tight as I could. Now, at least one of these creatures seemed to eventually become aware that I was awake, and it just gently put its hand on my back with its fingers wrapped around my shoulder and just held me for a few seconds and then let go. Firmly held me. It seemed to have, from what I could feel, its hand, from its base of its hand to the end of its fingers was like a foot long. So it seemed to, from what I felt, it had 2 very large and fat fingers that were like a foot long, which is unusual for the size of the creature. They were only very short. And after it let go, I held on as tight as I could and didn't move, and I tried to pretend I was asleep. And then the creatures, I wasn't aware of their presence anymore. But I just waited. Time went by, several minutes went by before I was game enough to do anything. And eventually I had enough courage to spin around and look, and there was nothing there. But I then became aware of something in my ceiling. In the ceiling there was this square portal. It was square and like just a hole in the ceiling. A square hole in the ceiling. I was looking at it for quite a while and puzzled by it. I was wondering, did these creatures come from this portal? They couldn't fit. There's no way they could fit in this. It was too small. But there was this square portal in the roof. And then several minutes later, it just dissipated. It, like in a cloud of haze, it just dissipated into nothing and just vanished. This doesn't make any sense. Now, in my memories of being outside this planet, I don't recall any supernatural phenomenon or anything like this. This is something else. So I've got no explanation for that, but that happened several years ago. Now what's the next one? Okay, yeah, also several years ago. This is a strange one. I don't understand. So one time, I remember shaving at night before going out, and I went out for dinner, and I shaved that night, and I was clean shaven. About 7 p.m. I shaved. And I went out for dinner. I came home, had a late night, and eventually went to bed in the early hours of the morning. The next thing I remember is this. I'm faced with this, what appeared to be like a childlike drawing of grass, a tree, and well, there was something else there. I think it was like a table or something. It was something really simple. And I was just faced with this image, this childlike image, like it was drawn by a child, and that was all there was. My thoughts were completely blank, and my whole mind was focused on this image, like I was in a trance, as though this image was the object of my trance, and I was tranced onto this image. I eventually broke free of it, and I was like, didn't make any sense to me. This isn't right. I questioned this image, and I slowly came to gain my ability to think and become properly conscious again. And suddenly I snapped out of it, and I realized I was just standing still, up straight, in a dark room, like a storage room. I didn't know where I was, but there was a doorway in the room, and it wasn't pitch black, but it was dark. I walked out of the room, and I found my way into a hallway, and in this hallway there was a window outside. There was a series of windows, but I looked out of one of these windows, and I could see what appeared to be like a tunnel of space. There was a defined edge to it in this tunnel, and on this edge was what appeared to be warped space. These like portals of warped space scattered around the edge of this tunnel. I could see into space, but this place was like in a tunnel of a void, and I could see distortions of space all along the tunnel as I was traveling through it. And I realized I'm not on Earth, obviously. I'm in some strange void with portals into space. I then walked along the hallway and I found my way. I went in through another room and into a curved area where there were stairs at the end of it going up into another area with a domed entryway, a large domed entryway. And as I came closer to the stairs, a group of about half a dozen grey-like aliens. They weren't anything like any description I've ever heard of any greys. They looked like greys, but they were very small. They were muscular. They were skinny and muscular. They had no fat on them or anything like that. They were very muscular for greys. They had very big muscles on them. And they moved around like 8-year-old children. They were full of energy and they moved around like 8-year-old children. And they came down the stairs and they were surprised to see me. I started to panic, like, are they going to do something to me? I've been discovered. What are they going to do to me? And they were first surprised. They weren't scared or anything. They weren't concerned about me. They're like, in my head, I could hear their thoughts, and they basically said to me, "Oh, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be here." And they weren't concerned. They were just a bit surprised, like, what was I doing? What was I doing there? And I was surprised that I could understand what they were saying, and I was able to speak back in my head. And I had a conversation with them, and they were receptive to what I was saying. They spoke to me. They spoke back to me. They answered my questions. And we had a conversation and asked where I was and what was going on and all that. And they explained to me that... First, I'll explain one of the things that they said when I asked how I was able to speak to them. They explained to me that they could speak to me just like I could speak to them normally, but they chose not to. They had devices scattered around the area that were able to... that enabled them to speak to each other through thought. And while I was able to understand the words of what they said, it wasn't in English. I was able to understand the words, but the grammar wasn't like English. It was a little bit different than English, and it was more efficient. And they explained to me that they preferred to communicate this way because it was a lot more efficient. So we had a conversation, and they explained to me that they were from the distant future, at a time where the universe was in its final stages. They explained to me that most species at that time had become separated from each other and withdrawn from each other. They explained that there were some wars that went on, and they started distancing themselves from each other, and they had at that time technology to bend space-time around itself and weave it in this strange weaving way that they were able to basically to take a section of space and then close it in on itself and create their own bubble of space. And they explained to me that they had more power over this space than they did in the normal universe, and they could just create an empty space out of nothing, and space in the universe would just stretch itself around the hole, and just there'll be no trace of the point where this space was made. They explained to me that most species did this at their point in time. Most species did this and separated themselves in their own bubble universes, and that the universe was largely unoccupied at the time. What life was left did that. They explained to me that these portals that I saw, that they were portals into specific points of space and time. That they explained to me that it was very difficult to create these portals, and these portals were how they entered the universe at different places in the universe at different times in history. They explained to me that they went back in time, and what they did was they harvested resources that no one would miss, stuff that wasn't needed, wasn't used, and they would do it covertly as to not interfere with the timeline, and which would affect and change themselves. They didn't seem to be concerned about the impact that it could have on them. They weren't that concerned about it, but they were covert about what they did, and they just took things that would not be missed. And one of those things that they took was, they explained to me that they were harvesting brain chemicals from humans. Now, they didn't explain this to me at that time. What happened was, as they were explaining things to me, what they were doing, that they first explained to me that they were harvesting from humans. They didn't explain the brain chemical thing yet, but after they explained to me that they were harvesting from humanity at different points in time, I became upset, and I explained to them this was wrong, that they shouldn't be doing this, and I began to become violent about it, and they started becoming scared, and then they acted in a peculiar way. They weren't scared anymore, and they were delaying me so that I wouldn't see what was happening behind me. Someone would come up behind me and hit me over the head with something and knock me out. The next thing I remember, I'm sitting on an inclined chair, and they were two of these aliens they had a device hooked up to my head, and they were harvesting brain chemicals from my brain. As I woke up, I communicated with them again, and they weren't concerned. They would talk back to me and everything. They answered everything I said. They weren't concerned about me, and they were responsive and everything, and continued the conversation. And that's when they explained to me that they were harvesting brain chemicals from humans. Now, they explained to me that there were two chemicals that they were harvesting from the human brain. They explained to me that humans once used these chemicals earlier in their evolution, but they still make these chemicals, but they don't use them anymore. That humans don't use them anymore, so that we don't have a use for them. We make it, but we don't use it anymore. But they have a use for it, and they were harvesting it from us. They said that no harm was being done. We wouldn't be missed, and I was upset about it, but I couldn't do anything about it. And I end up just going along with it. So when it was all done, I blacked out again, and next thing I know, I'm in my bed. I am very disorientated and sick, like I'm extremely hungover. It was like an extreme hangover. And I eventually went on the internet and spoke to some of my friends on the internet, and I explained what had just happened. And then I realized I had a beard. Now, I checked the time, and the time wasn't that long after I went to bed. I felt like I'd been asleep for days, and I felt really sick. I wasn't tired. I was sick. So something had happened, and I realised that I had a beard. Now it was less than 12 hours earlier that I had shaved, and I had a beard. I took photos of it to prove it to my friends, and that I had suddenly grown this beard. But there was more. I had a really, really sore foot, and I couldn't even walk on it. And I took a photo of my foot, and I had what appeared to be an injection site, like I'd been injected by something. But I wasn't just injected on the surface. It felt like I'd been injected, and it had gone really deep into my foot, through the bone and everything. And I couldn't walk on it. So I took a photo of it, and I took photos of it in the following months. And it took months to heal. It got worse. It blistered up, and it took a long time to heal. And I took photos of it over several months. I don't know where those photos are now, but I showed my friends, and they can witness that they saw the photos of my beard and this injection site. And now that's the end of that story. I'll go to another story. What other story on my next one? Okay, this is a paranormal one. This is about ghosts. Now, I remain neutral on the topic of ghosts, but I can't deny what I've experienced. Now, I do have multiple paranormal, supernatural, whatever you want to call it, experiences that seem to defy physics. And this one involves what appears to be ghosts, dead people. Now, what happened was this is when I was living with my parents, so what would have been teenager or early 20s or something like that. I can't remember, it was a long time ago. Now, there was only two of us home. There was me and my cousin Jim, who has since deceased himself, but he was in the dining room, and we could see we were in looking distance of each other. I was out in the balcony, sitting on a chair, and with the glass balcony door closed, but we could still see each other through the glass. And the dog, Brutus, was lying down on the other side of the door, near me. He was looking out the door, just lying there. So Jim went on the phone to speak to someone on the phone. I don't know what his phone call was about. He was on the phone for a long time. And while he was on the phone, a strange sound, I could hear a voice. It seemed to be coming from everywhere. And it was first I could hear the voice of a man who seemed to be upset, and then I could hear a voice of a woman, and it started getting more clear. And then Jim went off the phone, and I didn't realise at the time that he could hear it too. He was looking at me in this strange way. He was looking at me, and I was looking at him thinking, are you hearing this? And I didn't say anything. He didn't say anything to me at the time, but we did afterwards. And as this sound got louder and clearer, it seemed to become focused around a specific area, around the stairway going upstairs. And as this sound became clearer, and as the event progressed, the look on Jim's face was turned to horror and terror. He was scared shitless. I could see that he was scared shitless. I could see that he was clearly hearing what I was hearing. Something was going on, and it appeared to be a man and a woman arguing, and they were running up and down the stairs, coming up and down the stairs, arguing, gradually coming further up the stairs as they argued, and it was to the point where I could actually hear the words that were being said. And as disturbing as it sounds, They were arguing over being dead. Now, the woman didn't want to acknowledge that they were dead, but the man was explaining that they were dead and they needed to go. And they needed to go quickly. But the woman didn't want to go, and she was arguing with him over it. And she wanted to come. She was drawn to something in this home, in this house, which was me. But she was drawn to something, and she needed to do something. And he was arguing that they were running out of time, that they had to go. And eventually it was really clear, and it was at the top of the stairs. And then suddenly it stopped. Now, during this time of these voices arguing, the dog was also scared shitless, and he was crying and carrying on. He was scared shitless, and a couple of times he just did the bolt, ran down the stairs, ran out the backyard, and just went completely berserk, went nuts. Like he was trying to attack everything. He just went completely nuts. And then he settled down for a while, and he lied down and started crying out the backyard on the ground. And then he eventually came back upstairs a couple of times and sat back right next to me again on the other side of the door. And so by the time that these voices stopped, the dog was again sitting at the other side of the door, just scared shitless. And Jim was still looking at me, staring at me, scared shitless. And some time went by. I think it was like about 1 or 2 minutes of silence, and then suddenly a woman's voice from underneath the light in the lounge room, in the middle of the lounge room, this woman's voice shrieked and screamed and cried. She was like, as though she'd finally acknowledged that she's dead, as though she was in shock and terror, and at realizing and acknowledging that she was dead. And she was really close to me when she cried out. And then the dog started crying, and Jim just got up and shut himself, basically. And then shortly after that, I opened the door and went inside, and me and Jim said at the same time, basically the same basic thing at the same time, that, did you hear all that? Did you see all that? Or did you hear all that? And he's looking like he's about to pass out from terror, and we basically confirmed that we both experienced the same thing, that appeared to be two dead people coming up the stairs, I'm up and down the stairs and come up the stairs, and then the woman screamed. And, we didn't know what to make of it. And then everyone else came home after that, and the radio was on. And on the radio, it was announced that a man and a woman had died in a car accident about 30 minutes away from where we were. Not 30 minutes. 30 minutes before this experience. They died 30 minutes before this experience happened. They were at Erina. They died at Erina, I think it was. Erina, and we're at Batter Bay. That was also about 30, that's why I got confused. It was about 30 minutes, they died 30 minutes away, 30 minutes drive away, about 30 minutes before this experience. So it may well have been this man and woman who died. That was really strange, and I was a witness to it. In fact, in the lounge room of that house, the window is permanently fogged up in the lounge room because of a supernatural experience of apparently of a figure, an apparition that passed through the window and permanently fogged up the window. But there's a lot of things that happened. I'm only giving you a couple of experiences here. So there's been experiences of clearly extraterrestrial phenomenon, clearly supernatural phenomenon, and then there are things that seem to be a bit of both that I don't have an answer for. My memories of being away from this world. There was no supernatural phenomenon, whatsoever. But clearly, there's something going on in this world beyond that. So, what's the next one? I've got one more example. Okay, the storm. This happened, I think it was in my late teens at Batto Bay when I lived there in my parents' house. So what happened was I slept through the day and I woke up in the late afternoon. And when I woke up, there's electricity in the air. Something felt strange. Everything felt strange. There was something going on. And I looked at my clock radio when it was in the late afternoon. Clock radio plugged into the wall, so it must be said that there was electricity going into my bedroom at the time. So that I could see the lights on the clock radio of the time. I wish I got to remember the sequence of events in the right order. I might be getting this out of sequence, but I went outside and I could see that there was a massive storm front. It almost hit. There was no wind, nothing. It was just dead silence. And there was this massive storm front coming. And it was from horizon to horizon, just this, where it was clear blue sky and then it was just black in a straight line. Never seen anything like it. And I'm basically like, holy crap, there's a massive storm about to hit. I better go back inside. And I went upstairs to tell my dad about it and warn him in advance about it. And he explained to me that, yeah, he was already aware, he could see it coming. And he explained to me that there's already a blackout and I could see around, or the power was out. And I said, how long has it been a blackout for? And he said about 15 minutes. And I'm like, but my clock radio's on. I've got power. How is there a blackout when I'm getting power to my room? He explained to me that it must be all in my head or something. I went back downstairs and I looked, and my clock radio was still on, and it was still in the late afternoon. Didn't make any sense. As I was there in my room, the storm hit. Oh, no, it didn't hit yet. Sorry. What happened? Yeah, okay. That's what happened. The wind started. The storm hit. The wind started. It didn't rain yet. The wind started. So the storm hit, and as the wind started, I could hear doors opening and closing and slamming shut upstairs. And I'm thinking, all the windows must be open upstairs with the wind or something. But no, that wasn't what was going on. I could hear footsteps slamming, footsteps running around upstairs frantically. I thought it was my dad at first, but my dad's, he was a bit frail and he wouldn't be able to run around like that. Didn't make any sense. So there was someone upstairs running around the house, opening and slamming doors, like it was frantically searching for something. And then the footsteps ran down the stairs, went through other rooms downstairs, and then it got to my room. And as it got to my room, the footsteps stopped running and they started walking slower. And then they just slowed down and stopped right outside my door. A few seconds passed by, nothing happened. I'm thinking, who or what is outside my door? And the doorknob turned, and the door slowly just opened right in front of me. There's no one there, but the door turned and opened right in front of me. And I'm like, what the hell? And shortly, a few seconds after the door opened, there's like a pause of about a few seconds of awkwardness. The rain just suddenly hit. And then my clock radio blacked out. And the blackout hit me. As strange as that sounds, that's what happened. Okay, that's as much as I'll explain for now. There's so many stories that I could explain. But that's some that I wanted to explain now. I'll probably explain more later. So make of it what you will. I've had a lot of extraterrestrial experiences, many of which have witnesses. I've had paranormal experiences with witnesses, and I've had things that are, it's a bit of both. That don't make any sense. All I can say on the topic is there's a lot more going on than anyone is aware of. So there's something going on. And there are things going on that relate to me. That these phenomena seem to be drawn to me. And in my childhood, I was mocked a lot because of it. Some people would call me an alien, some people would call me a devil or a demon, mocking me over it, because they would experience these phenomena always around me. Never anyone's always around me, and the phenomena always were always focused on me. A lot of these things happen. I've had objects thrown at me in the house, just things, just suddenly like a can of something would just fly off the wall towards my head, and I'd duck and miss it, and it'd put a dent in the wall. These things happened a lot. At first I thought it was just the house, but it wasn't. The phenomenon followed me everywhere, and with a lot of witnesses. And people distanced themselves from me because they didn't want to be the target of these scary things themselves by association. But there's so much I could say. I just wanted to mention those few stories for now. That's it. That's all I'll say for now. Alright. There's one story I was going to mention I completely forgot about. So I recorded another file just so I can mention this. Okay, after I finished high school, which was in the 1995, so this was like 1996, 1997, 1998, somewhere around there, during the UFO wave period too. I, by freak chance, came across two guys from my year in high school, Bryce and Brendan. Bryce Webster and Brendan Douglas. And I think I met them when we were fishing or something. But anyway, we got talking, and they wanted me to come over their place one night. And I almost joined the army with them at one point too. But I went to one of their places to spend the day and night, and we got to talking about all kinds of topics. And one of them brought up the topic of meditation and trances and stuff, and about how he had this strange experience where I think he said he saw one of his dead parents or something, and he almost died. I explained to them that it's a dangerous topic to deal with, that when you're in meditation in a trance-like state, you're under the power of suggestion, and you are psychologically vulnerable, and perhaps vulnerable in more than psychological ways, that it's not something you should mess with. That I had explored the topic myself and found it something to not mess with, not to be very cautious about. But they insisted that I try and put Bryce into a trance to see something, just to see what he could see. There was something he wanted resolved. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, I was to put Bryce into a trance, and I explained to them that this is dangerous. I don't recommend it, but I will do it, and I will set something up to protect, just in the freak chance that something happened, based on the experiences I've had myself of being targeted and attacked. I would set up I can't explain it, a three-way bubble that I would set up to guarantee that nothing would happen, that all three of us would be safe, just in case something by freak chance happened. And I explained to Brendan that should he see anything happen, anything unusual happen, Don't say anything. Just look at me and wave your arm up and down to let me know that something has happened. Don't say anything. And don't interact with anything. And so I put Bryce under a trance. It went for about 45 minutes. During the later stage, it all went fine. There's nothing happened. Everything went fine, and it was all casual. Everything's fine. And then suddenly, I felt a strong evil presence in the room. And out of the blue, I said, "I feel Satan's presence." Suddenly, I'm in a black space. I can see Bryce in the distance, floating around in the distance in this void space. He's just floating there, just drifting along. And I could sense that he was in danger, imminent danger. I traveled to him as fast as I could, and I could see what it looked like an army of demonic creatures, twisted demonic creatures, wielding some kind of weapons, and they were charging at Bryce from the distance. As they came towards him, they threw what appeared to be fireball-like projectiles at Bryce, and I instinctively and somehow spread myself over him like a shield. I turned into a blue shield and surrounded him like in a sphere. And all the projectiles just harmlessly bounced off me. And then they stopped, the projectiles stopped, and I, as a shield, a bubble around him, I took him out of the void, and then suddenly I'm back sitting in the chair again. As soon as I get back, Bryce just gets up off the ground after being in a meditation trance like thing for 45 minutes. As soon as I get back, without any cue for me or anyone else, he suddenly just gets up off the ground and stands up. I see to my right, I can see Brendan looking at me very attentively with his eyes wide open, and I can see the ends of his fingertips and part of his arm moving, but I can't see his arm. There's a big black blob in the way so that I can't see him waving his arm, as I told him to do in case something happened. I explained to him, Bryce, Brendan, I can see that I can't see your arm, but I can see that you're moving your arm. I get your message. And as soon as I said that, the black blob just disappeared. I then checked on Bryce to see if he was okay, and he said he feels fine. And I asked him, "Why did you just suddenly stand up like that?" He said, "I basically just woke up and I just decided to get up." And I asked Brendan about what happened, and according to Brendan, as he was sitting there watching me put Bryce into a meditation trance or whatever you want to call it, this evil figure with a smile from ear to ear, a grin from ear to ear, drifted through the room, sat down on the chair across from him, and just sat there staring at him. I think it said something to him, and as I said to him, don't respond if anything happens. I think it said something to him, but I can't remember what it said. And that's when he decided to do what I said and start waving to me. Don't interact with it, just wave to me. And he said at about the same time Bryce got up, it just vanished. So it would have been the same time I got back, it just vanished. There's more to that story. I won't mention the whole story, but there's more to that story. But that's basically most of it. There's so many stories I can say, but anyway, I might add more later. But that's as much as I mentioned for now. Just wanted to mention that final one. That's it.